I want you all to put yourself in the shoes of a young, exciting, dominant infielder in Major League Baseball. You're in your early 20s. You're in the 100th percentile every single year in sprint speed. You're in the 99th percentile or so in outs above average, making you amongst the league's best pretty much right away. Offensively, your numbers increase each and every season to just under 1,000 OPS total that we saw in 2024. And between all these accolades into one, many believe, and for great reason, that you are already the best shortstop in Major League Baseball. Yet you look around you and you look after helping propel your team to a surprise playoff run this past year, and your offense outside of yourself is absolutely putrid. There is 0 home run power for another consecutive season. And the same woes have strapped your favorite team, your team that you're leading. There's no immediate solution as to how to get out of it. I present to you Bobby Witt Jr. and what is everything wrong currently with the Kansas City Royals. And in today's video, we're going to deep dive not only the dominance of Bobby Witt Jr., but how Kansas City can do right by him, the fans, and the immediate time it is for this club to get on a run for not only 2025, but for the years going forward. How's it going, everybody? My name is Tyler Ward. You guys might know me as Wardy, where I cover the New York Mets mainly at the WardyMLB YouTube channel, as I'm also a Bleacher Report host Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern for MLB-wide topics, and a recurring contributor in the New York Post Sports YouTube channel. And today, in our latest WardyMLB video presented by Stark Raven Sports, shout out to our guy Mike on the queue with the editing as always, we're going to talk everything you need to know on the Bobby Witt Jr. saga, and ultimately where things stand now with the Royals and what they can do to better their club here throughout the course of the season. But let's start with Bobby Witt Jr., because that is the star of the show here. That is the star of the game. One of the best stars already across Major League Baseball. And unless you're a rival fan of the Kansas City Royals, it is really difficult to root against Bobby Witt Jr. Every single year, he has been breathtaking, with his defensive upside that is amongst the league's best. And as someone who's spoiled watching Francisco Lindor every game as a Mets fan, I can tell you that I, too, am very envious of Kansas City Royals fans and what they have in Bobby Witt Jr., because he's just that good. And that isn't a slight on Lindor at all, as it is a further appreciation of the young greatness that is Bobby Witt and what he continues to become. And seeing what Bobby has done on the offensive side of the ball has been nothing short of breathtaking over the past couple of years. The stolen base ability is through the roof because of how elite of a speedster he is. Defensively, amongst the best in the game. Offensively, spreading for all fields too. Not overly reliant on power to have success, but it naturally comes because of how balanced of a player he is. A true 5-tool talent. Fast forward now, Bobby Witt Jr.'s first couple years in the league gets a new long-term extension to be the future captain, to be the leader now of this Kansas City Royals team, passing the torch from Salvador Perez, who's still with them, but isn't getting any younger, and is the lone piece of part of that 2015 championship club that beat my same Mets and broke my heart all those years ago. But as we fast forward to present day, the Kansas City Royals had themselves a very impressive 2024 season. Offensively, they were known on their contact and gap-to-gap ability far more than the home runs, as that was their biggest Achilles heel throughout the entire course of the 2024 season on the offensive output, and that would ultimately be their demise, even reaching postseason play with the great dominance of guys that we saw there in Seth Lugo and Michael Wacha, just to name a few on the pitching front. Outside of them, we know that the Royals have fluctuated with their production from the bullpen to the back end of the rotation, but it still comes down to that offense, which is what's going to propel you over the top the way that it did as the Yankees got past the Royals, got past the Guardians, and ultimately fell short to a Dodgers team that was leaps and bounds better than them there in the World Series. The point of bringing up the past is that that past is now the present, I should say. It is now the present, and it's going to be the future unless the Kansas City Royals change something here. Because with the exception of a guy like Mark Hanna, a former New York Met, who I love plenty, who's a great contact ability guy, who's a great in, just a very small sample size so far here in 2025, there is not one other singular batter in the Kansas City Royals lineup that has had the same exact sample size, except for one that's been decently above league average. Every other batter, for the most part, has been well below league average, and it includes, again, the most notable guys that you think of right away in this Kansas City roster, especially when we look at guys like Vinny Pasquantino, Jonathan India, that they just acquired there for Brady Singer this past offseason. Both have been beyond underwhelming. Salvador Perez, who was still providing a good amount of offense this past season, has completely fell off a cliff to begin 2025. When we look at guys like MJ Melendez, Michael Massey, I mean, this is just shells of what they were or what they even can be potentially for what we know they have been in years past. Hunter Renfroe, the same exact applies. It doesn't matter having a guy like Hunter Renfroe if he can't bat higher than $140 for you. The swing and miss is going to be so consistent that you're not even going to get close to the home run power that you're looking for. And as great of an arm that he has, he needs to make sure that he has the consistent defense to back it up. And he doesn't have either of those things right now at that point in his career. The same thing can be said with a good chunk of this roster just underperforming. But how much of this roster is underperforming versus actually playing a bit to expectation? Because it cannot be understated, going back to the 2024 season, how much their Achilles heel was the lawn ball. That was something that Bobby Witt Jr. and Salvador Perez didn't have a problem doing. Vinny Pasquantino can obviously drive plenty out, but outside of them, there really isn't much else there to look to on the offensive end. And as the Yankees ultimately took them down in postseason play, they took them down in part the best way that they know how, with the home run power helping lead the way. Now, as we look at this Royals team in 2025, they're underperforming, they're underwhelming, while Bobby Witt Jr. sits 70+% above league average as a batter. Bobby's doing his thing as a surprise to absolutely nobody. At the time of recording this video, a 308 average, a 381 on base percentage, and a 473 slug for a 1.2 WAR already this year, a plus offensive and defensive player. But when Bobby Witt Jr. is leading your team offensively with just a total of 2 home runs, and no one currently has higher at the time of us doing this video right now, that's a major problem when you're a month into the season. It doesn't change the fact that, oh, we're a month into the year, so we should just take this with a grain of salt, because these games matter just as much as any other game throughout the course of the 162. And should the Royals miss out on postseason play and miss out on, say, cracking a wildcard spot at minimum, you will defer back to their underwhelming start to the year on the offensive front to be one of their biggest Achilles heels as to how they fell in the position that they're now in. So now it begs the question, what can the Royals do about this? Because there were a lot of rumblings this past offseason, potentially landing a guy in Anthony Santander before he signed that multi-year deal there with the Toronto Blue Jays to stay in the AL East. There were also rumblings with Starling Marte and the New York Mets, as the Mets had plenty of interest in trading Marte this past offseason, and they negotiated a trade actually for Hunter Harvey, a reliever from the Nationals, to the Kansas City Royals that we saw this past trade deadline in 2024. Pretty much a younger, more controllable, higher upside version of Ryan Stanek to degrees, what the Mets were initially looking to seek there before they brought Stanek back this past offseason. And the Royals denied that trade from happening, as it was discussed right around the winter meetings in December. So are the Royals still interested in someone like Starling Marte, who the Mets wouldn't be opposed to obviously dumping and still eating the majority of his contract in the final year of his deal? Maybe, but Starling Marte, just how much does that move the needle for you if you're a home run hungry team that doesn't have the home runs to feed the beast? You also look at other key guys that could be made available lean up to the trade deadline. And there's one very notable player, in my opinion, and that's one who's completely fell off a cliff the past couple of years because he hasn't had a lineup around him and he's completely disinterested in baseball. Can't blame the guy playing in Southside, and that's Luis Robert. Luis Robert is a change of scenery and a decent lineup away from going back to being that north of 40 home run hitter he was back in 2023, while being a true 5-tool talent, not only with great contact and gap-to-gap ability, but tremendous defensive upside and solid speed on the bags, to say lightly, when he's truly clicking on all full cylinders, not playing lazy, is healthy. All the things that are hard to avoid when you're on the Chicago White Sox because they're the Chicago White Sox. But enter a team like the Kansas City Royals, and that is a team and that is an opportunity that might just be best for them should the interest be there from both sides. Because from Kansas City's point of view, you're buying low on a guy that a couple of years ago was pretty much untouchable, and you're still going to have to give up assets, but it shouldn't be to the same degree, even with the team control that he has, should he be as underwhelming as he is right now. And if you guys don't know Luis Robert's numbers, you just see them here. They're not too hot, but bear in mind, he's also in a putrid lineup where he's probably not happy to go out there and play each day and probably just views it as a job and nothing more. It's hard to view otherwise, again, if you are in the shoes of an active White Sox player, understandably so. But the Kansas City Royals, they need to make moves and they need to make changes. And this is something that they need to do this past offseason that they chose not to. And it's already rearing its head here a month into the regular season out of the American League. So when we evaluate the Kansas City Royals throughout the remainder of the 2025 season, if you're wondering how are they going to be able to get anywhere where they need to be, it starts and ends by building around Bobby Witt Jr. You cannot extend this man to a long-term deal. And for him to accept that long-term deal, knowing very well that he could get a larger bag there should he hit the free agent market once he's eligible to do so, but he wants to be the homegrown talent. He wants to be the true leader, the passing the torch from Salvador Perez to Bobby Witt Jr. in order to truly solidify this and get this Kansas City Royals team back to their championship days with Eric Hosmer, Mike Moustakas, and everyone else in company that we saw in their 2014 and 2015 runs. They have to be able to allocate dollars around Bobby and make those smart, savvy moves in season as well to make the proper adjustments before it's too late. Not that it's too late at this point in the season, but before you know it, if Kansas City cannot get on a groove offensively, they are going to look absolutely putrid in what's already a very light division, a very weak American League versus a National League, where the Royals have all the opportunity to pounce and try to overtake things big time, a continuation of what they were able to do with their second half run in 2024. But baseball fans, I would love to hear from you guys, your thoughts on the current issue with the Kansas City Royals and Bobby Witt Jr., because you cannot be a sustainable team on the offensive front that currently ranks 29th in Major League Baseball out of all 30 teams per Fangraphs on WAR. It just is not going to get the job done. Bobby can only carry you so far, and Buddy would absolutely love to have some protection around him. And I'm sorry, Jonathan India is fun, but he does not move the needle for you and pretty much your biggest splash offensively this past offseason, with the exception of Mark Canha as a last-minute pickup that you got heading into the season, among others. You have to do more. You need more power, and until then, it'll be this continued issue where the Kansas City Royals and their fans have a one-man show to lean on, but nothing more. Thank you guys again for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. Be on the lookout as we're going to be coming out with more MLB-wide topics throughout the course and over the next week and every week here on the WardyMLB platform presented by Stark Raving Sports. Thank you guys again for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Peace out.